the choices you make at school, work, or play, by the people you meet, or the things that you say, by the fears that you face until they go away. Your life is a story, it's scripted by you, by the new things you learn, by the things that you do. You can reach for the stars, you can help others too. You can learn from the past, so our futures come true. His story, her story, some stories sing of glories, other stories sing of love and pain. My story, your story, we write our own stories of new frontiers or dreams we can attain. You can skate for the glory of winning the gold. You can study the brain to help young and old. You can fly into space or create something bold. Or do quiet good deeds that will never be told. Some women before us whose stories I know have taught me some lessons which have helped me to grow. I'd like you to meet just a few of these friends. I am scripting a story. Who knows how it ends? His story, her story. Some stories sing of glories, other stories sing of love and pain. My story, your story. We write our own stories of new frontiers or dreams we can attain. So reach for the stars, let yourself shine. I know you can do it, one step at a time. Dig deep down inside, polish the glow. Your story is within you. Now let it grow. And I proudly serve as the Cultural Ambassador for the Maryland Women's Heritage Center. And it is here, and I'm so glad we have such a great crowd. We're celebrating the updating of the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame, where we here at the center add her story to his story to tell our story. And we're so thrilled that you're here with us today. I have a few housekeeping points. We have 2 bathrooms that are in the back, and their keys are on the back table on the corner, and Josie's holding them up. There are 2 keys back there. There's also access to a bathroom behind the concierge out in the lobby as well. And as I mentioned a little earlier, we have Loretto Gubernatus, who is recording everything, our videographer, and just to make sure that you're not blocking any of the cameras. And I'm so thrilled that we have such a great crowd. Frances Hughes Glendenning is the president of Maryland Women's Heritage Center Board of Directors, and she's been on the board for over 7 years. Francie was instrumental in the early phase of the development of the center. She is also, of course, the former First Lady of Maryland, and while First Lady, at her direction, the Maryland State Archives organized a stunning exhibition of Lady of the House, a study of Maryland First Ladies and official hostesses. Francie is currently the Executive Director of the State Board of Education. And may I present Francie Hughes Glendenning.
Okay, don't go too far, because I promised to be brief today, because I want you all to really enjoy the performances. And of course, you heard just a very uplifting performance. Let's give Kate a great hand. I have to say, during these challenging times, the times that try women's health, that it is very uplifting and inspiring. So thank you. Today, we all could use a little inspiration, I'm sure, so we can go back out and fight the good fight as we do. And so that was merely the beginning. Thank you so much. And Kate's going to be taking you on the journey as the mistress of ceremonies this afternoon. I remember, as a young lady, seeing all these amazing women in the community. Move this way. I told you, I don't even think I need a microphone. Use that, I do. Okay. And so many women in the community who did so much, but you never saw it in history. You just never saw it. And then, as I grew up, so I started, frankly, collecting on index cards quotes from women. And it became known as then the Francis Hughes archives of quotes, and I used to carry around all these index cards. Mercifully, now we don't have that. There are whole websites and things devoted. But I guess in the 1970s, I saw a quote that really got me going. She was Clarice Stas Stoll at the time, but she now is Clarice Stas. These things happen in good families, you know. She and her husband parted ways. And she said, history as a discipline can be characterized as having a collective forgetfulness about women. And that really resonated with me. So since the 70s, I have worked with so many of you here and some of you who aren't here any longer to really record, just as Kate insisted that we record today, this, because things are gone. Things disappear. If it's not recorded, it didn't happen. So I want to thank all of you for being here today, and I'm very excited that we've added nearly 85 new additions to the Hall of Fame. We're not quite up to date yet. We've not quite finished with 16 and 17, but we're almost there, and it's quite an addition today. It's very exciting. I know you're going to have a little history of the Hall of Fame past, and then, of course, where we are now, and then a little bit about the future. But I don't want to go on too long. I do want to thank Josie Thompson, and where's Rhonda?
Right here.
Tomlinson, the two there. They really co-chaired this meeting. And our devoted administrative person, Judy Williams, just had fairly serious surgery. And she's not able to be here today. We didn't want her to try to do so because it would not have been a good thing. But she has done so much, not only for this in the background. You know what that's like. You know how we women get things together and piece them together. So I wanted to acknowledge her. And also our executive director, where's Diana? Back there. I'm going to turn it back over to Kate because I want us to stay. I don't want to be the reason we're off schedule because I want you to really enjoy it. We women need to stay on schedule. Thank you so much, and thank you again for being here for this wonderful occasion.
I'd like to make a few acknowledgments from the people in the crowd and in the audience today. We have Karen McManus, who's a Deputy State Director for the Office of Senator Van Hollen. And I am going to list off the Hall of Fame honorees who are here today. Please hold your applause until the end of that particular time. We have Dr. Diane Adams here, Beverly Byron, Catherine Gira, Sally Grant, Elizabeth Fran Johnson, and Gwendolyn Rooks, Linda Shevitz, and June Willentz. Excellent. Wow, thank you so much. We're so pleased that you're here today, and we look forward to networking and chatting with you at the end of the program. I also would like to acknowledge any of the women who are here from the Maryland Commission for Women. Okay, we've got a few hands back there. And we missed Elaine. Bill Harmon, you're here representing Elaine Danforth Harmon. Thank you so much. And let's see, we have, again, Dr. Catherine Gira from the Maryland Hall of Fame Selection Committee. And from the Maryland Humanities Council, Judy Dobbs. There she is back there. And the Maryland Women's Heritage Center docents in our volunteer event committee, and our videographer, Loretto Gubernatis. Got it right? And the Maryland Women Heritage Board members. Let's see the hands who are here. Thank you so very much. I would now like to introduce our first speaker, which is Sally T. Grant. Sally currently serves on the Maryland Women's Heritage Board of Directors and is a member of the planning committee for this event. Sally has for years worked passionately in the field of women's rights and civil liberties in her home state of Maryland. She has served as a role model for women and young girls by working in business and legal fields at a time when few women did. In 1982, Governor Harry Hughes appointed Sally to the Maryland Commission for Women, and he later elevated her to the Commission's chair, a position Sally held from 1984 to 1988. And quickly, I'd like to share a little story. Sally became quite a role model for me. I met her around in 1984, and we were at the theater, and we were talking, and we got around to, I asked, well, what do you do? And she was telling me all the tremendous work that she does. She was working on here at the Maryland State Legislature, and her work in women's policies and civil liberties, and I went, wow, that inspired me to be somebody I thought about when I went on to do my work for women in history and women working in lobbying as well. So you are a great role model there, Sally. As Commission Chair, Sally encouraged other women to become actively involved in social issues by advocating for bills that established pay equity and flex time for state employees. Now, this next part of her career, we are most grateful for her role. She was a founder of the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame and the Women's Alliance of Maryland. She has also served as Vice President of the National Council of Jewish Women and the Girl Scouts of Maryland. Sally?
Wait a minute, don't go away. I want you to know this woman is one of my heroes. Not only is she accomplished, she's bright, she's beautiful, and she's tall. Thank you, Kate. And don't worry, family, I'm not going to sing like Kate. Just wanted you to know that I brought a program I found in my files from the first Hall of Fame, and we'll talk about the Hall of Fame, the inaugural Hall of Fame. We'll talk about that in a minute. I've been asked to make a few comments about the Women's Hall of Fame and its founding, and so I'm going to outline first the political climate in Maryland at the time, which was 1983, 4, 5, and we went through that. Then I'll talk about the Commission for Women and how the role they played in the founding of the Hall of Fame. And then they asked me to make a few comments about my role in this. The political climate. Harry Hughes was governor. Joe Curran was our lieutenant governor. Lorraine Sheehan was Secretary of State. Ben Cardin was then Speaker of the House. Mickey Steinberg had become President of the Senate. Our Speaker, Beverly Byron, was already in Congress. Steny Hoyer, who had been Speaker of the House from Prince George's County, was elected to Congress, and so was Barbara Mikulski, who had been a city council person in Baltimore City. Rosalie Abrams and Margaret Schweinhout, I can never pronounce that either, were in the state senate, too. There were 33 women in the House of Delegates, including Lucille Maurer and Nancy Kopp, who would each serve as our state treasurer. Nancy Kopp still serves in that capacity. And we had one future congresswoman, which was Connie Morella from Prince George's County. Connie Bimes, Constance Bimes, many of you might remember her, was the executive director for the Maryland Commission for Women, and with the election of Harry Hughes, she moved to the State House, where she became the appointments officer for the state of Maryland. The women in the legislature had formed a caucus some years before. In 1984-85, Ann Perkins from Baltimore City was chair of the caucus. The caucus and the commission worked so closely together on so many issues. The Maryland Commission for Women, I would like to give you just a brief history of this. Senator Rosalie Abrams in 1965 introduced legislation creating the Maryland Commission on the Status of Women. In 1972, Maryland passed its own ERA. Somewhere between 1974 and 1975, the name was changed to the Maryland Commission for Women. Then Chair Shoshana Cardin said, with the passage of the ERA, women had achieved status, maybe, and now they needed an organization, a commission, that would advocate for the issues affecting our everyday life. Shoshana Cardin was a mentor to many of us. I know Joanne Orlinsky, who followed Shoshana as chair of the commission. She was her mentor, she was my mentor, and there were so many others, not just in the commission, but around the state of Maryland. Okay, let's fast forward quickly. 1983-84. Pauline Menace, delegate from Prince George's County, and the second red, there's her picture is on that second red column there, so if you get a chance, take a look at it, please. She returned from a national meeting and contacted the Maryland Commission for Women with the idea of having a Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. Martha Wyatt was then chair of the commission. The commission embraced this idea and immediately began researching and planning. The goal was to have a public event in 1985 that would do two things. It would celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Maryland Commission for Women and establish the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. Quickly, an independent selections committee was formed, and we still have it, and Dr. Gera was head of it this year. And we also had a planning committee, and it seems I'm always on a planning committee. And we worked in great partners with the caucus. It was almost breakneck speed to get it done, but it was wonderful. Of course, we all know commissions set policy, we're up there. And the staff does most of the work. And what a wonderful staff we had at that time. Martha Clark was our executive director. Dolores Street was assistant director. Donna Moore was administrative staff. Joan Williams and Shirley Chase were support staff. And what a team together. They were wonderful. Dr. Mike Miller from the library at the Court of Appeals offered the library as a repository for much of the Hall of Fame materials, and we used them for quite a while. The inaugural event was held at, at Bryce House in Annapolis on July 21st, 1985. It was a great celebration. As I remember, the weather was pretty hot, but the atmosphere was just wonderful. I have here with me, as I mentioned before, the program from that first Hall of Fame inaugural time. Now, very quickly, my role in the founding of the Hall of Fame. In 1984, Martha Wyatt, then chair, was appointed to the bench of Anne Arundel County, the first woman to ever serve on the bench in Anne Arundel County. Had to wait till 1984. And then Governor Hughes asked me to serve as the commission chair, and it was an opportunity that I couldn't refuse. And suddenly I found myself on the planning committee, helping to raise funds and having to give opening remarks at the event. Well, planning, raising funds is okay. Opening remarks made me a bit nervous, but we got through it. There was one chore that I had to attend to that was extremely important for the commission, and for the Hall of Fame. And that was, we had to write bylaws and a constitution to register as a nonprofit in the state of Maryland. And I would like to quote for you the purpose that we wrote in the bylaws and the Constitution. A Hall of Fame purpose: to recognize and honor Maryland women who have participated in shaping the state of Maryland or the nation, and to provide visible examples of women achievers for tomorrow's female leaders by yearly selecting women to be inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. Good words. With the guidance of our executive director, Martha Clark, we somehow all managed to do the commission proud that day. So here we are, 31 years later, after the founding of the Hall of Fame, gathered together for another grand celebration, celebrating Maryland women trailblazers. Thank you very much. Now I have one more wonderful job to do. It is my privilege now to introduce our keynote speaker. Our keynote today is the Honorable Beverly Byron. She was Congresswoman from the 6th District from 1978 to 1992. She has a long biography, but I'm going to just mention a couple things from it. As a member of Congress, she was a senior member of the House Armed Services Committee and served on a number of other committees. Among her other endeavors, she chaired the Board of Directors of First Blue Cross Blue Shield. In 2000, Governor Glenn Denning appointed her the chair of TEDCO, and maybe you can tell them what that's all about, because it's wonderful. Beverly Byron was a single mother raising her family after the death of her husband in 1978. There is so much more, as I mentioned. So please take time and read her amazing bio in your program. And please welcome Beverly Byron.
And I get the podium. That way I can hide back here. Let me first of all say that Joanne Orlinsky and I have been friends for a couple of years. Probably most of you might not have even been born then, because it was back to 1960, maybe 59. I'm not sure which, but it was a while ago. And so when she called and said, a long time ago she called, and she said, "Can you come and speak?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I thought it was just a small group of people." Heavens forbid, we've got the room full and there are no more chairs in the back. We do what we can. So Joanne and I go back a little ways. Francie Hughes Glendenning and I go back a little ways. Back when she stopped at Francie Hughes, we crossed paths again and again on the campaign trail in Western Maryland in 1970. She was a little younger then, and I was younger then. And so it's kind of like coming home with a lot of friendly faces that I have seen. Karen McManus and I have been crisscrossing on the current political trail. And I'm not supposed to be talking about politics, so I'll try to get off of that, but I'm talking really about women who have gone out and made a difference in what has happened in this state. I can talk about Eleanor Roosevelt, Harriet Tubman, Sally Ride, Sandra Day O'Connor, Condoleezza Rice, but you know what? None of them are from Maryland. So I think we ought to talk about Maryland. And I had the great pleasure in Congress of introducing on the floor of the House a new member who was from California. And the California delegation wanted to know what I was doing introducing her. And I said, well, I don't think you all understand. Nancy Pelosi is from Maryland. And she's the 9th member of our congressional delegation. California may think they got a Clinton, but really, she learned everything that she knows at her father's knee when he was Mayor D'Alessandro and Congressman D'Alessandro. I then decided I would go back and look at, because I tend to be much more interested in what has happened in the congressional arena. And we are now getting ready to celebrate the next week, which Nancy is hosting a reception on the Hill for the 100th anniversary of Jeanette Rankin from Montana, who was the first member of Congress, first female member of Congress, elected in 1916, began her service in 1917. She served 2 terms until 1990, 1 term until 1919, and then in 1920, the 19th Amendment passed, which gave women the vote. It's interesting, she was elected before women had a vote. It didn't move that quickly into the Senate because a member from Georgia was the first female senator in 1922. And she was not appointed upon the death of her husband, but appointed on the death of the senator that represented Georgia. And that was Rebecca Felton. And she served only 1 term. We then go and look at Maryland to figure out when Maryland came into the having a female member. Well, it was 1941. She served, stop laughing, Joanne. She served from 1941 to 1943. She was 38 years old when she was elected. She was elected to serve at the death of her husband, a widow with 5 children, all boys. She campaigned in a black veil and black clothing. Back in those days, that's what you did as a widow. It happened to be my mother-in-law. I married one of those 5 boys. It was in the day when we had the old back smoky-filled room. Francie is smiling because Garrett and Allegheny County had a lot of smoke-filled rooms. Frederick County did too. She ran, and Montgomery County powers that be said, well, I don't think we're going to support her. I don't think we can support her. Because she couldn't defeat the Republican candidate, Mr. Stewart. Well, surprisingly enough, she pledged not to seek re-election. And they kind of said, okay, you can fill it for this time because you won't be here long. She won by a little over 1,000 votes. 2 years later, it came time to file for re-election. And unbeknown to all those people in the back room, she said, I'm filing again. And they said, wait a minute, what's going on here? As it turned out, she then decided that maybe she shouldn't file again, and she withdrew. But the times were different then. And her in her first race, she had a few people helping her campaign, starting with Eleanor Roosevelt and Estes Kefauver, names that those of us that are really old remember.
Or who know history.
I don't know, I asked people, like somebody the other day, a name, and they said, never heard of him. David Rubenstein. And I'm thinking, everybody's supposed to know David Rubenstein. But anyway, that's another story. It wasn't until she went out of office in 1943, and it wasn't until in 1973 when Margie Holt from Anne Arundel County was elected. She served until 1987. She was followed 2 years later by Gladys Spellman in 1975, who had a very tragic time. Steny replaced her on the ballot, was elected, and still there, still in leadership. And then in 1977, there was a little feisty individual from Baltimore City who decided that it's time for her to run. She'd run once before, hadn't done very well, but this time she thought she'd do better. And so in 1977, Barbara Mikulski was elected to the House. She stayed there till 1987 when she then decided that it's time for her to move on to the Senate. I will tell tales out of school, which I do all the time and get in trouble for. But as you know, in each of these bodies, you have a couple good friends. And Barbara had Geraldine Ferrara and Barbara Kennelly and myself. And one day she was, don't anybody tell her I've told this story, but one day she came and she said, well, what do you think? I'm running for the Senate. And we looked at her and said, yeah, Barbara, but you can't run in polyester pantsuits and docksiders. And she said, why? And I said, well, you just can't. And I said, you got to go get some shoes, you got to go get some Ferragamas, you got to get a good suit. So she comes back about a week later and she said, puts her foot on and she said, look at this shoe. I said, yeah. Do you know how much that shoe cost? I said, yeah. She said, my mother would have bought a purse, a coat, a pocketbook, a hat, shoes, and a dress for what I paid for these shoes. I said, yeah, the last time I looked, your mother wasn't running for the United States Senate. So we had good friendships as members, and ones that I hold dear today, that I still look to, those friends. I was elected in 1979 under the same circumstances that my mother-in-law was elected. And I was elected by the Central Committee 3 days after my husband had died of massive coronary on the, nominated 3 days after my husband had died, training for the Marine Corps Marathon on the C&O Canal. The governor had come to me and Blair Lee said, oh, we think we'd like you to run. I said, oh, I couldn't possibly do that. Oh, no. I said, I have a 13-year-old. Then I thought, wait a minute, I don't have a job. And she's expensive. And my kids, my older boys, I have a granddaughter who's enjoying these tales, Molly Byron, who has got a political bug. And so my boys said, don't pay any attention to her. Yes, she'll run. So within 4 days, I was nominated as a candidate for Congress. This was the middle of October. November election. I was running against a guy from Baltimore, Melvin Perkins. Anybody ever heard of Melvin Perkins? That usually is a good lad. He was in jail at the time for beating up a bus driver because he was eating a sandwich on the bus. Needless to say, I probably am the only person that was ever elected to Congress that never took a stand on an issue. I had one campaign contribution from Till Hazel of $100, which was the filing fee. So I like to say I have gone in Simon Pure. I owe nothing to anyone. And I did not make the pledge to the Central Committees that I would not run again, but they all said, well, we'll nominate her, and then in 2 years we can get a real candidate. Well, I stayed 14 years. Interesting thing, and it is a point that really bothers me today, is when I first was elected, there were 16 women in Congress, and 4 of them were from Maryland. The year I went into office, there were 76 new freshman members of Congress. I was one, Geraldine Ferrara was another, and Olympia Snow was the third one. And need I say how well Olympia and Geraldine have done. They did We kind of kept that number. Maryland was kind of in the leadership of women members because in 1985, Helen Bentley arrived, and you would never fall asleep when Helen was there. When Helen left Congress in 19 95, she was still extremely active, a very dear, good friend of mine that we lost last fall. But she'll not be forgotten because those of you that live in Baltimore, you have the Helen DeLick Bentley Port of Baltimore. Helen was, and the rest of us were joined in 1987 by, 1997 by Connie Morella, who served in Montgomery County. And then when Connie left in 2003, those of you that have looked at Europe and the refugee issue have watched Connie as the ambassador in that area. So we have had a very interesting group of women serving. In 2008, Prince George's County elected another woman to Congress, Donna Edwards, an outstanding, go get in trouble with Karen right now. But Donna was a very good, solid member of Congress. I think she made the wrong decision when she chose not to run for re-election. But she did, and she ran a strong, hard race against someone that I've known since 1975, Chris Van Hollen. It's a relative, and so, but today, with Senator Mwhc retiring, and Donna Edwards leaving Congress, Maryland, who was one of the leaders in the country of women in the congressional arena, has none. Currently, there are 22 women members of the Senate, and currently there are 88 women members of the House. That does not speak very well for those of us in Maryland. You know, I talked a little bit about Mwhc and her shoes, but I think one of the things that I find so sad today is that so many of the members don't take time to know their colleagues. I can tell you that I work extremely hard, but I love every minute of it. We had an awful lot of things that we got done, but we got them done because they were fun. There was a night that, since I was on armed services, I had kind of access to military aircraft. So anytime you talked about it. And there are members that come today and say, I don't have a passport. I don't want a passport. I'm not going anywhere. Well, how can you know your neighbors if you don't go see them? So I am one that did a lot of traveling as a member. I tended to, you're comfortable traveling with your friends. Certain people I wouldn't travel with because I didn't think they were putting substance into their work. There are some that I always traveled with. One of them being Senator Mwhc, Barbara Kennelly, Lynn Martin, Liz Patterson, all women delegation. We were on our way to Berlin one night, and I called Senator Mwhc the night before. I said, Barbara, you need to bring a hatchet. I need to bring a what? I said, you need to bring a hatchet. Why? I said, I haven't time to tell you now, just bring a hatchet. So 2 days later, we were in Berlin. The wall is coming down. There are the four of us, a senator, 3 members of female members of Congress, with our hatchets chipping at the wall. And the police come by. So we all scatter behind a tree. The police go by. We all come back out. We work on our pieces of the wall. And they come back by. We all scatter. I have my several pieces of the wall. And we were smart because we got pieces that had color in them. Barbara still has hers in her library on her table. I have mine in my apartment. But we worked hard, but we had fun. We went on another trip. We were in Warsaw, and it was just before Christmas. And we were meeting with the Polish defense minister. Barbara said, you know, I'm Polish. Don't you think I can chair the delegation? I said, I'll share it with you, but it's my airplane. So she said, so the four of us, 4 women, meeting with the defense minister, and all of a sudden I look up, and here comes 4 people with bouquets of lilacs in the middle of December. If you don't think this is the dumbest looking group of 4 women holding lilacs talking about national security and nuclear weapons, you got the wrong idea. But graciously say thank you very much for the flowers. Yes, we're delighted to have them. We will keep them in mind, and goodbye. But one of the things that I think is lost by not having the number of women in office, they bring a total different perspective. There were years when I first was elected, I was so glad on Armed Services that I didn't have one of the 2 seats down on the front row because everybody would think, oh, there's the secretary. Well, you know, I wasn't the secretary. My check looked just exactly like my male counterparts. And so I got into an argument with one of my colleagues on the committee who was a Top Gun aircraft fighter in the Navy. And I said, you know, he's over on the floor talking about no one has been off of an aircraft carrier and had done a cap shot but me. I thought, wait a minute. So I picked up my certificate, marched over to the floor of the House. We were in session late at night. Nobody was watching, so it was okay. And handed him my certificate. He said, oh, I didn't know. So, you know, women do an awful lot of things in office, look at a lot of issues, and they look at them with a little different view. And so when you look at the people on these walls that we're celebrating today, they have all been achievers in their own right and in different areas. And we are very fortunate to have the number of women that we have today, not only in office, but in this state, moving forward in science, education, and industry. And so I'm delighted to share today with you a little bit heavy on the congressional angle, but I think we all are more comfortable talking about things that we know as opposed to things that we wish we knew. Thank you.
Thank you so much again. And of course, she is one of our very, very, very famous trailblazers here in Maryland and across the nation. I'd forgotten about some of your trips representing the United States of America. So thank you again for that.
You can't come and not get presents.
Well, good afternoon again. I'm Diana Bailey, and as you know, I'm the Executive Director of this amazing center. How many of you, it's your first time here? It's cool, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's really, so we're so glad to see you and so glad to see some new faces. We're glad, too, to see some faces that are here frequently, and we're especially grateful to see those of you from the Hall of Fame. It brings the center to life to have you here, so thank you so much. And I also wanted to mention that in the room, Linda Shevitz, who's in the Hall of Fame, but she's also one of the co-founders, and this is part of her vision that you see here, so Linda, special thank you to you. And as you know, it's March, but here at the Women's Heritage Center, every month is Women's History Month. Mm-hmm. So we invite you to come more than when we just have adventures here. And we've been celebrating and exhibiting her stories for decades. And Maryland, as you know, has many hidden figures. So it's quite exciting we have all these new hidden figures that many of the people that you see here are Maryland. But we're hoping that the presence of women's contributions across the country will be, they can use us as a role model too. So we hope that you're enjoying this afternoon's celebration and program. But I also wanted to mention, as with the Hall of Fame, one of our members, Carmen Delgado Vota, was a board member and was also instrumental in the beginning of the Maryland Women's Heritage Center. We lost her last week after a long battle with cancer. But her family had hoped to be here today, but I think they're planning for her memorial service. It's going to be at the National Cathedral in D.C. the end of the month. And Carmen was instrumental very much in Maryland, in the United States, but also very much involved internationally for women and girls, in particular Hispanic and Latino women and girls. So she'll be greatly missed. But we also have recordings that Loretto did, so we have some of her words and her experiences. So Carmen's here today with us in spirit as well. And I also hope that you enjoyed meeting and talking with Billie Holiday. You'll see in a second. Mary Pickersgill, where are you, Mary? Stand up, Mary Pickersgill. Thank you. And Henrietta Zold is here. They were early inductees into the Hall of Fame, and you'll get a chance to meet them a little bit more later. And they're affiliated with the Baltimore Heritage Area, the Star Spangled Banner House, and the Jewish Museum. So I also wanted to thank our partner organizations for coming and then bringing in the Hall of Fame and its members to life. And I wanted to mention, too, we have a number of events coming up in March. In fact, starting on Wednesday, Loretto and some colleagues will be here all day and the end of the evening, The Magic of Cats and Dogs, and after this is over, you can get more information. The end of the month, the National Organization of Women will be here on Sunday, March 26th. Linda Mahoney, raise your hand. You can see Linda afterwards, but they're celebrating Ordinary Women, Extraordinary Deeds. They'll be here. Next weekend in Howard County, we're partners with Girl Power. Many of us have been working with women and girls in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So we'll be co-partnered with the Applied Physics Lab in Howard County. And those are hands-on experiences for girls, young girls, to consider exploration in career pathways. And that was in partnership with a Howard County Women's Giving Circle, and several members and colleagues from Howard County are here today. So we partner with basically any program that's good for women and girls. I also wanted to mention the end of, middle of April, Edna, where are you, Edna? Edna's hosting a program of wine tasting and women's social, and you can talk to Edna after. We also have the flyer up here. You can see a lot goes on in the spring. And the Commission for Women, as you heard before, they will be inducting the 2017 8 women into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. And those panels will be up on our board hopefully next year at this time. There's more information here, and Lee, who's the chairperson, will be available to talk to you more about it. And you can register on their website. Do you still have slots left?
Yes.
Yes, good. Okay. I also wanted to mention that here in the center we have external partners. We're having Marion House is doing a celebration of their 100th birthday, and we also have the librarians here later in the month, and they're particularly doing writing for women's history resource materials. So we try to have a broad variety of people that come and use the center, not only for the exhibits, but also to meet and do planning, as Sally was saying, on programs and services for women and girls. I also wanted to thank Loretto again. Where'd you go, Loretto? Okay. Oh, there. She's our video producer, but more importantly, thank you, Loretto. She's documenting today's event, but I also wanted to let you know she's been documenting the Hall of Fame, many of our events here for many, many, many years. She also is the video producer of Her Story, which is some of the interviews with Hall of Fame members, but also other women in Maryland that we can get her stories on tape, and some of them are on our website as well. So we're going to be expanding Her Story.
And Diana's the host of Her Story.
And Michelle's Kitchen, who's back there, I want to thank her for the catering and all the tasty goodies. But again, she of course is a woman-owned business, so I just couldn't help mentioning that. I'd also like to thank again our sponsors and our donors. You may not know that we no longer have state or federal funding, so we depend on our sponsors and donors and members to move us forward in terms of our programming. And without you, we wouldn't have been able to host this amazing event. And you saw the names of the sponsors and donors up on the beautiful board. So we appreciate that. And I wanted to also extend a special thank you for those people who worked tirelessly with me on the panels. We took the large bios that were submitted to the Maryland Archives, and then we had to get the things to fit. So, for example, Dr. Catherine Gira did a lot of the editing work with that, and Kathy Gold, where are you, Kathy? Kathy she has eyes like a hawk. So she would be counting spaces so that the panels would be as perfect as possible. We know that there's a couple things that we need to correct, but we'll be doing that when we do the next run of panels. And Francie mentioned Judy Williams, who's our admin, who's on medical leave. But again, we've been working on this for months, and Judy, of course, was instrumental in making sure that we had records of all those as well. And you've heard quite a bit before already. A special thank you to our graphic designer, who also, fortunately, is a board member, Josie Thompson. We were laughing earlier that the kinds of rough materials that Josie got and then made magic is just unbelievable. I also wanted to mention that Josie did the design, the graphic design for our Women in the Arts exhibit. So we're so proud of that, and we're so grateful that she's with us. And Rhonda, I know you have a couple things you'd like to add.
Yes. Hi, I'm Rhonda Tomlinson, and I asked Diana if I could just sneak in for a couple of minutes. I'm also the treasurer for the Maryland Women's Heritage Center. And I wanted to just impart some information and tell you how grateful we are for all of you who are here. I don't know whether you know that we are a 501c3, which means any donations are, of course, 100% tax deductible. And we no longer get direct funding from the state or the federal government. So all of the programs that we put on, the ones Diana's talked about, we also do Women in STEM programs down at Goddard. All of those are through donations or small grants. And our new membership program, which, in case you hadn't heard this, we, as part of the non-member fee today, we added 16 new members because 16 people get virtual membership for 1 year as partners. So thank you and welcome. And I'll be in touch with you to enable to set up your membership and then get your membership card. Today was an event that was a fundraiser. And our purpose was to expand the Hall of Fame. As Diana said, we still have a few more to go. But we were successful, as you can see, and it is beautiful, and our graphic designer is awesome, and in terms of doing the work. And I just want to say one last thing, that over the last few years, I had the opportunity to meet and work and now call friends some of the Hall of Famers. And it's just really exciting to meet all of you and your family and representatives who are here, and upon which not only I, but my daughter, who happens to be up there, is an aerospace engineer, stand on your shoulders, and we do really appreciate all your hard work and what you have done. So thank you very much.
We want to maintain our mission, and that's our mission established to preserve the past, understand the present, and shape the future by recognizing, respecting, and transmitting the experiences and contributions of Maryland women, like those that we have talked about today, and those are the ones that are here today as well. And as we go through this journey, we'll keep you informed, and we'll let you know where our new home will be. And I hope that you'll consider joining us or volunteering with us in this process and then in our new home as well, because we hope there's a lot to be done, as you can imagine. So I wanted to thank you again for coming and providing your support to the center and to the Maryland's Hall, and to the Hall of Fame. And we hope that we'll see you again soon. The other thing I want to mention, Rhonda, if you'll come back up here for a second. As you can imagine, do you want to come up?
Oh no, I wanted to say is that when we embarked on this journey, we contemplated that we wouldn't be here forever. And so what I wanted you all to be sure to know, if you look around, all these things can be transported. They were created so that they could move. And so all the work and frankly the funding and everything, and the great sweat and toil and talent and creativity will be going with us. And if anybody has any thoughts of anything to offer in that regard to suggest to us, we really would appreciate it. But we did a number of years ago contemplate that this would happen, and really we're trying to plan for it. So all these wonderful items will be going with us. I just thought it was important to say that.
And as you heard throughout the event, Rhonda,
This was definitely a team effort, but as you could probably, I don't know if you could tell from here, but Rhonda's been working tirelessly and detail-oriented for months. So this is from your planning team, and with grateful thanks.
We now will have an opportunity to hear from Larzine Talley, who is our Billie Holiday today. So let's welcome Billie Holiday.
Nobody sings the word hunger or love like I do. I've got a hunger to be loved. The only time my mind is at ease and at rest is when I'm singing. That's how I express what my heart feels. See, you don't know what love is until you've been brokenhearted, busted, disgusted, and can't be trusted. See, my blues is as real as the gardenia I wear in my hair. And that's why, and that's why. I've got a right to sing the blues. I've got a right to feel low down. And I got a right to hang around, down around that river. Certain man in this old town just keeps on dragging my poor heart around. All I see for me is misery. I got a right to sing the blues. I got a right to moan and cry. And I got a right to sit and sigh down around that river. So that